loud. I guess I'll
Damn.
not wait for Fran to join because we never know when. So this is just a public discussion about one of the issues that we are currently, or one of the feature requests we're currently evaluating for the specification. And one of them are, when you have this kind of system with multiple different applications, how can you define what is within your system? And we have a few approaches that we're currently looking at. So this will be a discussion revolving around how we best can do this, while taking a few perspectives from different kind of use cases and perspectives of users. So one of the examples I will be using is our social media example that we have in the specification. I will be focusing on the WebSocket website part, where whenever a user press a like button, it will notify the website backend through WebSocket in this case. I've changed a little bit in terms of the syntax that we're currently using. So for example, you can see on the right side, we have the front end application defined. And we have a channel that's called like comment. However that is defined doesn't really matter in our case, but we see that the front end sends this sends the event over this channel once a comment has been liked. And then we have our backend application that is receiving this event. Now this is just a very, very basic example where we have the two applications talking to each other, where each of them are defined through async API. Ayush, do you mind me asking if that makes sense, like that specific part?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. But yeah, the syntax is a little bit weird because I adapted some of the changes that are being proposed currently for the specification, but it is to make it a lot more simple to understand. It's just as this application receives it and the other one sends it. It's nothing more.
Okay. Yeah. So I was like pretty. I was thinking about what operations are. So you cleared
Yeah.
it that it is a new app specification. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, in order to enable reusability of channels, there's a proposal of introducing this operations concept, which is like, I want to do this operation over this specific channel. That is all this is. And the reason I included this is because it's more easy to comprehend in terms of instead of publish and subscribe, because it has a lot of confusion involved. So this is the basic example. It's nothing more than one receives and the other sends the event. One of the suggestions about this is, well, when I have these two services, how can I define what is within my system in terms of these multiple applications? Because I have a backend and I have a front end. You could have a lot more, but in this system context or boundary, how do you define what is within this? One suggestion that was made was to introduce something called an application keyword. This is a new keyword that is not part of the spec currently, but it is a way to define, for example, within this system context, it's within the social media system. And within here, we have our backend service and we have our front-end service. Now, this is the the purest and I guess simplest approach in order to support this. And yeah, this is basically what we are trying to discuss, whether something like this should be possible in async API. The issue covers a lot more different approaches, but this is the bare minimum. It is how and if we would like to define how a system is defined. Ayush, I'm just gonna like keep asking you whether that makes sense, since it's a lot, like for me it's easier to comprehend it, but if it's something new, I just want to like have a confirmation that it makes sense.
Yeah, so like we have a just file in which we are defining what services we have. Like for example, let's say in social media service we have, for example, let's say uh, backend and front end. So we are just putting them in this file.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, okay. So like, and what is the use case for this?
And the use case is that, let's say that you have, normally you define an async API file for one specific application. Example, like we
Yep.
have here with the backend. The backend is defined using one specific async API file. Then we have, in this case, frontend. And the same goes for all other services or applications that you have that interact with each other. How can you, like the use cases, how can you group these applications together to form a system? How would you be able to do that in async API, for example? Should you be able to do that? That is kind of what we are trying to figure out.
That makes a lot of sense.
So, for example, in the diff tool, this would mean that you could take this specific file with the system, and then you can map all of these applications to each other and see where the difference is. If that makes sense, right? Like you can see.
Yeah, like so yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's more like if a channel was defined a payload different from this one over here, but the channels match, that difference could be mapped together once you know that these two applications should talk to each other.
Yeah, and do we have some kind of versioning on this system file as well? Like, let's say if I add something on the backend async API file, so uh, should we update the some kind of should we update the system file with some kind of version as well?
That that's a good question. Like, how do you version like a system when it has no, at least in this context, right? If I wanted to add a version about this social media system, does this mean that once you update one of the services, that this one should be changed as well? Let's say
I
that,
guess, yeah, like if I add another service, let's say if I add another backend and I define it in my applications field, so we should have some kind of versioning as well, right? Or I'm not sure.
no, it's actually a very good, I haven't even considered this yet. Because let's say that you make a feature for the website backend, right? What would happen down here? Would that mean that you would have to increase the feature down here as well? And if you make a breaking change up here, does this mean that you would have to change a breaking version in the system as well?
Do we have to have versions on the system file?
No. But it's a good question, like, because if we add this type of applications keyword and we start to have to constrain which keywords you can use besides those, that becomes really complex. For example, if you say that you can define a system through the applications keyword, but if you use this applications keyword, you are not allowed to add any version. You are not allowed to add any channels, for example. You're not allowed to do this. Like if you're not allowed to do this.
We should avoid these things. Like side effects are not really a good thing. Like just because this key exists here, then this other key somewhere else is affected. No, we should avoid this completely. Right, like just or at most, like for instance, like we just accept applications, and if applications is specified, we cannot accept channels and operations. That's the only thing. Like you either make it a system file or an application file, but not both. I mean, that's kind of fine. Like it's easy to understand, but yeah, like nested keys like inside info version is not mandatory unless no, that's, to me, that's like a no-go.
Yeah,
And
I agree with Daniel.
I will say even more like in a regular async API file, when you add a new change, when you change something on an existing file, on an existing channel, or on a message, on an operation or something, do you have to increase? Do you have to change the version? In the current async API, not in the future one. When you change something on a channel or in a message, do you have to change the version?
It depends on how you version your API, right? Or
exactly.
How,
exactly. So in the case of the system, I would say it depends on how you want to use this version number, or what do you want to use this message number for, this version number for, right? Like it can be the version of the file itself, can be the version of your system. I don't know.
Yeah,
to be honest, like, I have the feeling that sometimes I have the feeling that we have to get rid of the version field completely. Because I don't know, like people are not putting versions in this API file or open API files and so on.
Yeah,
but it's a pain. It's a pain to maintain it. You have to then use integration tools to keep them in sync and so on. So is it really a concern of your API, of your application? Should it be there? I don't know.
I mean, that's another good like discussion to have, but for for now, version is there. We have to address like how that affects it, right?
Yeah.
Because like I overuse version, like I use conventional versioning throughout all of my applications, and I actually use what's it called, conventional release.
Yeah.
And a GitHub action that, so when I make a feature to backend, it automatically bumps my version, right?
Okay.
But it's also because I use it for more advanced automation later down the line that requires my application to have a version. So it depends on how you store this specific file, as well as like how your entire setup is. But let's just assume version needs to be there. What would it have of cavities for an applications keyword, right?
I think it's the same as it is right now. Like unless unless I'm wrong here, I think this API doesn't define what this version means, maybe. Let me just check.
Well, I haven't checked up on that actually.
Yeah, provides the version of the application API. So the interface, let's say. So if you change the file, you might not be changing the interface. So for instance, if you change the description of a message or of a channel or something like that,
Sure.
you're not changing the interface.
Right.
So I guess in these cases, it's up to the end user to decide if it gets updated or not. Right.
Ayush, did you have something to want to tell?
Like we we can add version on applications itself, like on the fields. For example, let's say for the backend API, we can have another field that says the version. But I think that's necessary in unnecessary because the backend file itself has a version. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Because once this get resolved to this, for example, I mean, you have access to the
Yeah.
info version, right?
Yeah.
But the question becomes like, how can you maintain the system file once you start to make the major version changes? Would you have to have something like this?
I
Or
guess
would
we
it?
can use like we can use a separate versioning for system file. Let's say initially it should be 1.0.0, and if I make any changes on the backend API and let's say do something else, then it can be 1.1.0 or something else.
Yep, that's a possibility. Ooh, that's complex.
Yeah, like
I guess
it
complex
adds
real quick.
another. Yeah.
So another thing that I wanted to remark here is we're using $ref to refer to the whole async API file. Was it the proposal, like to have the whole file there? Because if in that case, I can then use async API version 2 files inside there in the applications. I can reference, or I can have a mix of async API files, async API versions.
Yeah, for sure. I
Here,
mean, you could also do this, right?
yeah. Do we want to have that? Like, I mean,
But
I
like
think
if
the
you
proposal was to have like application specific fields, not the whole file, right? Not reference to a whole file. If I'm not mistaken, maybe. I don't know.
But would this not be the same if you just reference which application it is? Like by
No, I
name?
mean that imagine that inside this array of applications, instead of having async API info object and so on,
Mhm.
or you can have info, but you don't have async API field. You
Yes.
cannot have it, right?
Yes, that's another way.
And you cannot have applications inside there as well.
And you're gonna do this now.
Yeah, you cannot have this as well. No. So you can only have servers.
It cannot be a system of systems.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it can be interesting.
It could be-
We can
Oh my
explore,
God.
but then we have to check recursion.
Oh no.
So yeah. So
But
yeah,
yes.
I will not allow it initially at least.
But that's actually a really good like discussion to have. How will versioning like be affected of having to specify it just through a simple applications keyword, and what is restricted or what should be not allowed to be like within these arrays. Like another approach that I wanted to like, this was one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is that the system And this is where we are really making some breaking changes. Instead of allowing applications to define which channels are interacted with, this and the same with servers, that would be defined by the system itself instead. This means that instead of being what we call application centric or centered around the application, we change it to be centered around the system itself instead. So this means that this file, this async API file here, would not really make sense without the system context. So instead of the async API file to revolve around an application, it revolves around the system itself instead.
Oh, you got me disappointed here now. Like, I was expecting another approach, but then you turned out to take you took another route. So I was expecting there. Stop editing. So I was expecting that from here you remove on the system, you remove applications completely, right?
Here?
And then you reference the system file from each of the async API files, like an include or something like that, or context system file, something like that. You know what I mean?
Okay. So you do something like
yeah, but don't remove the async API version instead. Yeah, something like that. Then it's like, okay, so then channel like comment must exist on the context. Or
right?
yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I like this solution.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I like this solution because then, yeah, you don't have a file. With, I mean, shit. I mean, as far as I know, all the requests we've got so far have been around people wanting to have like a menu of channels in servers or brokers, right? That's why they wanted to have this kind of system files, right?
Yes. One of the core requirements is that you can like list which applications are within this broker or system or however you want to like group things together, right? So this would not be enough, but both of these could be enough.
Yeah, but both, then you have to check that they actually match, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? So what if in backend I remove context, then what happens?
But if you don't have, for example, this some keyword that reference back to the system context, you wouldn't be able to use this async API file on its own. You would have to use it for the system, right? Yeah.
That's what I was saying, like comment channel doesn't exist as per this file definition.
Yes.
It doesn't exist. That's why you need the context, or you need to, I don't know, either have channels, I don't know, maybe channels can be either a string or a map. And if it's a string, it will reference the file with all the definitions.
Gire las ruedas laterales del robot para limpiarlas. Después pulse clean para reiniciarlo. Error 5.
It's the Roomba.
Me no comprende, man.
It got stuck somewhere.
Okay, right.
So
yeah.
You know what I mean? So that another thing that we can do is that on the, well, it's actually similar, like on the backend file and on the frontend file, we have channels, colon, and then the a string, which is actually a $ref, right? You know what I mean?
Here?
On the backend one.
Mm-hmm.
On the back, there you have channels. No, forget about this. Just channels, and then as a string, the value is a string pointing to the system file. Something like this, which is not cool, but yeah, in the end, it's similar to the context. So it's only that you have to provide this with channels and servers and so on. Like it's a more granular control, but yeah, that can end up badly because you can have channels pointing to one system and servers pointing to another system. That's not really cool.
Another thing
So-
that's like, if you do it like this, you can still do.
Yeah, no, of course. But then you need to have the comment like the name, right? Which is not that bad, but
Yeah, that will be basically duplicate definitions, right? That you would have to
Yeah.
maintain.
if you change the name comment liked, you will have to change it into places.
Yes.
That's what I don't like, but yeah.
Yeah. But on the same hand, if we go back to the original approach of just defining, instead of switching the system view, if we just go like this, this can be whatever file YAML, because you want to reuse it, right? So these two would need to use the same definition regardless.
Yeah. No, I mean this can be defined on the system file, right? The
It could,
channels can be
yes.
defined.
For sure. You can use system to define these things, but you can also do it externally, like through another file. It can be, you can even do
Yeah. Sure.
command like that YAML, right?
Yeah.
At least how with the current reference system, etc. But yeah, I can understand if somebody wants to define stuff from this system perspective like this, and not do this,
Exactly. Yeah.
because it is duplicate content. Like it's just a pain to do, of course. But we just need to map this somehow.
Yeah, but by themselves, these 18 GB files are not valid.
Oh, which one? Yes, exactly.
That's the problem.
Yeah. What if we added references here instead? It would be the same, right?
It's the same. You still have comment like hard coded there.
Yeah.
The name of the channel.
But at least it would be one less, like you wouldn't need this, for example. You wouldn't need to have this, you just need to maintain the link to it.
Yeah.
So it's better, but I guess still not like, still bad. One of the other things that I suggested was that what if we didn't care about adding another keyword, but these two files in itself forms the system however you want to define them. You can have your own little file that defines an array of like you can define this however you like, through whatever means necessary. If you want it in a database that groups these two application files together, you do it through a database. You can use a normal directory that if the two files are within the same directory, these two are within the same system. So this means that we leave it up to the user how you want to group applications together. That's another approach. You wouldn't have to. The only difference between this and no keyword is that it's up to you however you want to do it, but it can quickly become more complex maybe. because you cannot share the system with anyone. You cannot take this system file and give it to somebody else because they don't understand how, like, what the format is. They would be able to do that if they had a simple keyword, right? And I think that it was Jesse who came up with the who added that thought in the issue, which is like what's it called? Like, not contributors, but like whoever develops anything for async API needs a way to represent this, and it would be better if we explicitly allowed the defining this. So instead of it being like guesswork and you do whatever you want. So yeah. One of the things I wanted to bring to the discussion is, how would you see these changes from the perspective of the engineer that has to use them? Let's say that you're the engineer that are responsible for the backend system. It's your job to take this async API file and make it into a product. How would this system, let's say using this simple keyword, how would that benefit you, or how would that encumber you?
I guess from the backend engineer perspective, I have to also look at the front end file as well, right? Like, how does the front end file work and what kind of messages it sends? So, isn't that, I guess, bad thing? Or like he does have to go out on his way and to see the front end file how it works?
I think you can actually just use your own file, because your own file defines exactly what your interface is to others. So this defines exactly what you're doing, right? So you are receiving over this channel an event.
Okay.
Also, let's not confuse, like, the fact that you're receiving on a channel doesn't mean that the other side is sending you to this channel, right? So there may be systems in the middle doing some routing, some kind of routing. So the front end might be sending here, there's a system in the middle doing some routing, and then the backend will receive it somewhere else, right? So this happens a lot with when you have ESBs, like typical, for instance, has an ESB, and I think also with AWS. So the fact that you listen, let's say, on a channel doesn't mean that people can publish to the channel to communicate with you. Maybe they are publishing to a different channel, and there is some kind of routing system in the middle, making it work. So or multiple, not just one. So with some kind of business logic and so on. So yeah, the fact that you listen to a channel doesn't mean that people will. So that's why I want to clarify this, because maybe front end might not be sending, or you don't have to listen where front end is sending, because maybe you don't have permissions to listen there. I mean, when it's an HTTP or WebSocket API, yeah, it's clear. It's a point-to-point communication. It's client server. That's easy. But yeah, in other systems, it might not be the case. So I guess when you have your own file, it's cool. You can start working yourself on your application. That gives you independence. So that's the benefit, I would say. And then once you want to integrate your application into a bigger system, just have to edit the system file, and that's it. It's there.
Another thing that might be like a positive thing is that you as a user, if you design the backend system and want to gain more knowledge of the systems that are interacting with you, you can use the system file and tools, or however you want to do, right?
To understand, yeah,
To understand how the like who are the team that are behind the front end, for example, or whoever interact with me through this channel, whatever that might be. It might be a gateway, like however this system are structured. That would probably be one of the reasons I would care about this system file, and not only care about my own async API file.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a way for you to understand like the connections, right? Like how your system is interconnected.
Yes.
But again, like, let's be careful with this, because what I just said, like, by looking at the other files, you might be seeing that someone is published into topic A or channel A, right? And you think you don't care because you're not listening to this channel. But there is some ESB or system in the middle that will route from channel A to comment like channel. And you will not be able to perceive this relationship because we don't have a way to define this thing yet, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we can exclude these edge cases. That's fine. For now.
I mean, I wouldn't exclude it, but it's definitely something to keep in mind of, right?
No, what
But
I'm saying is that maybe this will be defined on the file itself, on the back end or front end or whatever, and then on a channel, maybe the channel can be like can have some kind of rule or something like that that says like I don't know, like messages published into this channel might end up into these 3 different channels, in one of them or in all of them at the same time, or in 2 of them, or like you know, like you don't know what's going to happen because this logic is executed in runtime. So you don't know where is it going to end up, but beware that it might end up there.
just to clarify, like what you're saying is that there might be something in front of this front end. That means that whenever we send like over this channel,
Yeah,
some external thing.
Yeah.
Whatever channel, other channel, right? It can be whatever. Yeah. Okay.
or multiple, yeah, and there
Or
can be like business rules, like from this day to this another day, or from this hour to this other hour every day, route these messages to this other channel.
Right.
And so you cannot define this statically on the basic API file, because yeah, this is evaluated at runtime. So the only thing that we could do maybe is allow for expressing that this message might be routed to a set of different channels, or we don't know the channel in advance, so it might be routed somewhere.
Right.
In case it's useful information.
Do we see any, like, not consequences, but like any negative sides of allowing, like from the engineer's perspective, do we see any negatives regarding like defining it through a simple applications keyword? Do I have any negative side?
I can't think of any right now.
I mean, the one that I can think of is that yeah, like it's a central place where you define all the, or I mean that you have to go and update whenever you make a change in your file. You have to go and update the system file, right? Or at least reevaluate it. So you know, because it needs to be updated, right? Because this $ref need to be resolved. So even though the file doesn't change, you need to reevaluate the dollar refs and apply them, just so you get the new one, right? But yeah, like I think that's a problem of the tool there. Like depends on what are you going to use the tool for, the system for. For instance, if you're gonna use it for drawing a real-time map, real-time diagram on a screen, right? Then yeah, you can have some kind of CI or a cron job that every 5 minutes it rebuilds the dollar refs and redraws the map or something like that. That's up to you, right? Like we give you the means, we don't tell you how to do it. We don't give you all the tools. We'll give people some tools, of course.
Yeah.
But like like GitHub Actions and things like this, but we can't read everything, right? So
That's true. That's cool.
So that's the only downside that I see. That it's like to have it like in. Well, actually, this is not a problem of the applications keyword. It's the same now. Like if people are doing this kind of applications keyword by themselves using an array or database or whatever, they will have to refresh the system to see it live, to see the new version. So yeah, it's the same thing.
But it's it's a negative thing from the application point of view side, right?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
All right. We have less than a minute because I can't make any meetings longer than 40 minutes. So we are cutting it short.
By the way, you have a Postman account. Assume
I
Postman
know,
account.
but that
You
means
log in with Postman and you have no limits.
But then I have to end the meeting and start another. So
no problem. It was a great meeting. No worries. That's fine.
Yep.
But I'm gonna do it again next Monday probably. So until we have all of the discussions done.